on the name of the auditorium here, it's a pleasure to have you. We're very eager to listen to you now, sir. You may start whenever you want to, sir.
Okay. Do you hear me properly, right?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. So, buenos días por todos. ¿Cómo estás hoy? Muy bien.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. So, before starting, if you would like to download the slide, this presentation, you can go to this address, www.slideshare.net/GAENVDD. For everybody in the room who is willing to download the slides, just go to this address and you can download the slides. You can view the slides on your laptop if you like, or you can download the video also and the slides of this presentation at any time.
Bueno, que sí, que se baja la presentación en cualquier momento, puede ir a esa página, entonces si copiamos más adelante el profesor se las da y ahí pueden ver toda la presentación. If you may share the whole screen with us, please. Full screen with you, if you don't mind.
System.
El ánimo de la presentación es compartir una parte del trabajo que él ha hecho y de las presentaciones que ha llevado con relación al tema. Dr. Jean, can you hear me properly there? I was going to ask you to please give me only a section of information for me to pass the information to them as accurately as possible. So we're going to do it bit by bit and not a very long piece of information, if you know what I mean.
Sorry, I don't understand you.
Basically, if you can give me only sections of information so I can pass the information to them into Spanish, basically a segment that is not too long, so I am able to do it in a more accurate way. So carry on, sir. Dr. Jean, you may start. Dr. John. Dr. John. Dr. John. You can hear it now. Yes, you may start.
Okay, so first, I'd like to start with some motivations, explaining the why and what of animated transitions in information systems.
Explicando las animaciones en transiciones animadas.
Then we'll see some basic concepts before a series of examples, of course, that will be animated.
Pues vamos a ver una serie de conceptos después de algunos ejemplos.
And in the end, we will try to conclude when and how to use properly animations.
Y después vamos a concluir y mirar cómo utilizar las animaciones correctamente.
So first of all, animation.
Animación.
It is not because I have an animation that it is good. For instance, I can move and animating myself, but this is not a good way to convey a message.
Could you repeat the first bit, because I couldn't hear you properly?
Oh, okay. It is not because I have animation that my message will be improved.
No es porque
So
yo
I
tenga
can
animación.
animate myself, but this does not mean that the message will be better.
No quiere decir que porque yo tenga mi animación, el mensaje va a ser mejor. Yo puedo moverme, pero el mensaje no tiene que ser presencial.
Ah oui, mais on ne voit pas là, parce que j'ai mis la graphique.
Yes, you can correct.
Ah oui, parce que j'ai mis le graphique, donc je ne le vois pas là.
Si, si, on voit le
Oui. Non, il voit le côté gauche.
voit le côté gauche.
Ah oui.
As
As an example of a familiar transition,
un
you
ejemplo
have
de
probably
transición
seen
familiar,
that on the Mac, when you open a window, an animated transition is triggered.
cuando dan clic, una animación va a ser activada.
Another example of animation
Otro ejemplo de
is this
animación
one.
es este.
Here, pictures are assembled dynamically according to different facets:
Aquí las
time,
fotos,
color, subject.
aquí las fotos son ensambladas de acuerdo a diferentes categorías, sujeto, forma.
So here there is an animated transition between the different views.
Entonces acá hay una animación, una transición de diferentes vistas.
A second example is this one, when we switch from one graphical view of statistics to another.
Otro ejemplo es cuando vemos, cuando vemos un cambio de una estadística a otra.
Again, an animated transition is ensured from the initial state to the final one.
Una vez más, una animación transicional es vista desde el inicio hasta el fin.
Another application of animation is the mnemonic rendering.
Otra aplicación de animación es la que está escrita ahí, mnemonic rendering.
Mnemonic rendering is a technique to replay what happened in the past.
Es una aplicación para darle play de nuevo, replay, lo que pasó en el pasado.
So, let me show you how it works.
Les voy a mostrar cómo trabaja.
Parce qu'il est maintenant. Ensuite, il a changé tout le So here is a Java application
Acá hay una aplicación
containing different windows, having different contents updated.
diferentes ventanas con diferentes clases de información.
And I can replay or I can go back in the past to see what contents have changed in these windows.
Y puede darle play de nuevo o ir a la parte, o ir atrás, mirar qué información ha cambiado en estas ventanas.
Again, an animation is used in order to go from one state to another.
Y de nuevo una animación es usada para ir de un punto a otro.
In animation, you have to count two different aspects: spatial aspects and temporal aspects.
En una animación se tienen que tomar dos aspectos. Which are the two aspects, sir?
Spatial aspects and temporal aspects. Time.
Espaciales y temporales.
Spatial aspects, for instance, if you want to move from the left graphic to the right one,
Los espaciales
how to move objects.
en los espaciales en cómo moverse de la izquierda a la derecha, objetos obviamente.
Here as an example,
Como un ejemplo,
we
When
can
analyzing
use
or presenting information using statistical
Statistics.
data graphics, it is common to look at a number of related graphs. For example, the viewer of a bar chart may want to switch to a pie chart to view relative percentages, transition to a scatter plot to look for correlations between two variables, or drill down by breaking up the data by categories. Animation is one promising approach for facilitating perception of changes when transitioning between data graphics. Using design guidelines motivated by research of human perception, we have developed Dynaviz, a system supporting animated transitions for statistical data graphics. Dynaviz provides animations for a number of different transition types, including changes of perspective, filtering operations, and viewing changes of data over time. In some cases, changes of value require changing the axis scales. Here we show a sorting operation. Animating everything at once can result in items including each other. By slightly staggering the movement of each of the bars, Dynaviz makes the sort easier to follow. Here, a bar chart becomes a radial donut chart. By growing the wedges to take up the whole circle, we form a pie chart. We can also perform drill-down operations, breaking up the data further into distinct categories. We can then unstack the bars to view the same data as a grouped bar chart. Of course, we can always reverse the transitions to return to the view we started with. We might want to compare different variables in a scatter plot to look for correlations. Here, we keep the y-axis values as the same as the bar chart, but use the x-axis to show a new variable. Animation is also helpful for showing transformations to the data. Here we show applying a base 10 log transform to the data. Both data and axes smoothly animate to show the results of the transform. Visual encoding such as shape, color, and size can be used to visualize additional data dimensions. To evaluate the use of animation in data graphics, we ran 2 controlled experiments.
Okay, another example,
Dr. Jan,
limited transition.
Dr. Jan, one
Yes.
second please, 1 second.
Okay.
Parece que todos ustedes pueden seguir, o la gran mayoría pueden seguir la presentación que ya en español, en inglés, porque ustedes tienen que manejar un inglés muy suave, muy técnico, muy familiar. ¿Quieren que sigamos la presentación en inglés exclusivamente o queremos que la presentación como vamos a hacer? ¿Inglés? Vamos al inglés.
Jan, we're trying to get the students to listen to you in English, so if you can go slowly, we're going to let you carry on without any pause, and I shall be here if there is any questions or any time in which they require you to repeat. So please proceed.
Okay. So in the next example, you will see animated transition for showing what has changed in a user interface.
The purpose of Phosphor objects is to help users follow and comprehend changes in the user interface. Phosphor widgets are a particular type of Phosphor object that use stylized afterglow effects to illustrate change. One of the applications of Phosphor widgets is in collaboration scenarios. Following the on-screen activities of a collaborator can be hard, especially if they occur in bursts. Adding Phosphor effects can focus the user's attention on objects that have changed. If users believe a manipulation took place in error, they...
So here, as you can see, each part of the screen that has changed is animated with an afterglow effect in green. In that case, the user can notice what has changed over time. The second aspect is about time. For temporal aspects, usually the slow in, slow out is the easiest way. So it means the time, as the time flies, the speed progressively increase and then decrease. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you see the graphic?
Yes, we could.
Okay. A common mistake is to have a constant speed over time. Having a constant speed for an animation is not very much appropriate. It is better to use, for instance, different speeds, like fast in, fast out. It means in the beginning the speed should be high, in the middle it should be slow, and in the end it should be fast again. Or the speed can be adapted to the message of the animation, so as not to have a constant speed, but slowing down on the important part and speeding up on the less important parts. Another example of animation is to ensure a transition between different screens. In this example, you will see how the user interface will change with animation of the content. So while I am enlarging the window, you can see more options, more buttons, more commands. Or you can change and keep a small resolution. In that case, you have less options. Again, each time the window is changed, an animation is used between the initial and the final stage. Another example, in order to show a proper usage of animation, is what has changed the web page. For instance, in this web page on Wikipedia, you can see that the yellow part here has changed since the last visit. Or this frame has changed since the last visit. A small animation shows that this part has been updated since the last visit. In order to come back on time, you can choose in the bar here at what time you want to go back, or at what time this information has changed. Animated transition, you can have several animations. Here you have a list of some of them. I will not detail them, like horizontal scrolling, vertical scrolling. But usually the best animated transition is always the smallest one. If I have to ensure a small transition, I will use a limited animation. If I want to switch from one important question to another, then I will choose a more important animation. Like, for instance, iris open and close, because this shows a significant change. Animated transition is also an advantage when the user interface is adapted. For instance, on the left, you can see an address book where you can pick a person and have more information on this person. On the right, you can see an adapted version for a small screen. But if I want to go from the left one to the right one, there is nothing between, no transition. I have the interface before adaptation, and I have the interface after adaptation, sorry. So the end user does not know what happened between. So in order to solve this, animated transition could be one solution. For this, we have built a system that automatically produces animated transition between states. On the left, we have an initial user interface, and on the right, we have the final one after adaptation. And each step is subject to animation one at a time. So let me show you some examples. Later on. Wait a minute. So here is the first example. Here is a login window, and if you reduce this window, first the rectangles are being compacted, the title is removed, and the user interface is reduced. Here is the example with the address book. You can see the interface changing. So once again, initially you can see that the list box is replaced by a drop-down list. Then the buttons are moved upwards, and then the window is resized. Okay, so here are some examples where you can use effectively and efficiently animate transition. The best one is to draw attention to a single element out of several, or to show what has changed, like in the update of Wikipedia. Or you want to focus on a hotspot. Out of different information, you want to emphasize some part of it. In order to be usable, an animation should be always short, because usually people like to have animation but not too long. Otherwise they just get bored. It is also good to complement animation with sound that is of course aligned with the animation. And nice thing is that there is a lot of animation techniques. I'm sure that you have used that in PowerPoint or whatever, like fade in, fade out, dissolve, wipe, etc. So in the slide we'll find out a UML class diagram showing the conceptual view of or framework for animated transition. The idea is that we have a model of something, like a model of a system, This model is itself composed of different attributes that will be subject to animation. For instance, if an attribute changes, I want to have this reflected in a view that will then be subject to a transition with an animation. So let me show you an example, a simple example of this framework first, and then two more detailed ones afterwards. A first example of this conceptual framework is visual transition between states. Let's imagine that you want to move a file from this window to that window through the network. So you have, imagine that you have a network between. Usually in Windows what I do is I take the icon and I drop it on the other one. Okay, fine. But there is no animation between. So what we could propose to Microsoft is to have animated transition between. So here is an example of the same operation but with a small file. As you can see, there is an animation showing that the directory is transferred from one window to another one. Now, if I have a big file, this transition will be adapted. As you can see, because it is a big file, it takes more time. If I have a fast connection, it will be faster or slower. So here in the animation, you can see the speed of the transfer. And in the last case, I have a big file with a very, very slow connection. And in the end, my file is transferred. Again, as you can see here, the size of this rectangle indicates the speed, and the length of the image depicts the size of the object. Another example of that is here I have a list of events in an airport, like this aircraft is taxiing, or people are unboarding from this aircraft. So if I click now on some new events, you can see that animation can support the change between the different states. So these are examples by moving, or you can invert. As you can see here, it's a push. So again, here in the conceptual model, you have different rectangles, and the animation is generated from the type of event. If it is a switch from aircraft bus, for instance, when I'm